Hello from the Hoboken Historical Museum. We are streaming out live on Facebook, YouTube, and X, formerly known as Twitter. This is Hoboken Talks, where on Thursday nights we talk about Hoboken. We've had guests like Shakira Rosa, Jack Silbert, Karen Kuhl, Todd Abramson, Bob Burt, Jerry Fallow, Gene D. Plummer, you name it. Be sure to check out our YouTube archive. Hello.
Hello.
I am Nora Martínez Di Benedetto, and I am here tonight with my fabulous, gorgeous, and trailblazing mother, Pat Donnelly Martínez. Woo!
Well, thank you, Nora.
Please feel free to chat with us in the comments on Facebook and YouTube, and we will do our best to respond. We consider YouTube our home base. So if you miss any of Hoboken Talks or you want to look at some of the other shows we've done, YouTube is the place to look. So I think that with that introduction, Mom, how nice of us to be here tonight chit-chatting.
I am thrilled to be here because I've loved the museum right from the start, and they do such brilliant work, and it's nice to be able to give back. So.
It even more than when you invited all the Christmas carolers in for a glass of champagne.
Oh, yes, I did that.
Yes, that was nice. That was nice of you, but this is a nicer way to do it too, I think, you know?
It sure is, yeah.
Well, I think that we'd love to start by understanding a little bit more about your early years. And, you're not, okay, spoiler alert, Mom was not born and raised in Hoboken, all right? Everyone remain calm.
Right. No, but close by.
Close by. So tell us where it all began, Mom.
Okay. So for me, it all began in Jersey City, where my family has been for generations. My one grandfather was a political operative. His wife, his name is P.J. Donnelly, and his wife, Mary Ellen, she was a suffragette. Oh. So I'm very proud of that as well. My dad was a fairly well-known obstetrician, and he was the medical director of the Margaret Haig Maternity Hospital. The most, I guess, exciting thing is that I'm one of 8 children. I was number 4 in the lineup, and this picture was taken before the last 2 arrived, but I wanted to include it because it was taken by a photographer from the Hudson Dispatch, and maybe that's where my interest in newspapers sprang from. I'm the little girl next to my dad, who's the bald guy, and my mom has my sister Mary on her lap. The others are Paul, who's behind me, Anne, who's between Mom and Dad, Peter, behind my mom, and Jimmy, all the way over on the right.
Boy, you look like Grandma.
The last 2, Monica and Kate, arrived shortly after that. But I remember that night. I remember we all had to get cleaned up and dressed up because a photographer from the newspaper was coming. And the reason was because my dad had been then named the medical director of the hospital. So.
And where in Jersey City did you grow up?
I grew up on Bentley Avenue, where there were a number of doctors, residents, and offices, and also it was also the home of Mayor Paul Jordan and Mayor Thomas Gangemi. They were neighbors. It's down right near Lincoln Park. The house is still there. I loved living there. You can imagine 10 people, 1 bathroom. It was a lot of fun, but we had just great times there, and it was a fabulous experience growing up with so many brothers and sisters. I'm very happy to say that even at this time, all of us are still on this planet, which is wonderful.
And speaking.
Yeah. Yes, we do. Yes,
A lot.
We genuinely love each other. And people always say, "How did your parents do that?" I have no idea. But we're very close. All of us, including nieces and nephews and grandchildren and former college roommates and neighbors. We all assemble in Maine for a week in August, and we have a great time. And if you aren't there, they talk about you. So
you got to show up.
You got to show up.
What was it like growing up in Jersey City on the West Side, as I like to call it, Jersey City High Society? What was that like for you as a kid?
Well, there were a couple of things I was thinking about. One was that, as you know, Jersey City was a Democratic or Hudson County was Democratic stronghold, and Jersey City was very. I mean, you couldn't live there without being politically involved to some extent. I remember skipping to school and reciting the names of candidates for the commission, and Election Day was a big deal, and people in my family were, they weren't committee people, but the committee people would stop by with the lists of who had voted, who from the block had voted, and who hadn't. I can remember being awestruck about one family on our block whom I really liked, and I found out that the parents were registered Republicans. I could not believe it.
Oh
the
my
shock.
God, that is shocking.
But anyway, I'll tell you one thing. You did learn the importance of a vote, and there was great interest in election results. I remember specifically when Kennedy was running, which was an important thing for Catholics, but also for Democrats. And the night of the election, we invited neighbors in to watch the results. We borrowed a second TV from some neighbor and set it up in a separate room. So there was one in the living room, one in the dining room, and then in the kitchen they had the radio tuned to an all-news radio show. And people were running back and forth from room to room saying, NBC just said this, but what about CBS? It was, and of course that went late into the night, so it was a real thriller. That was exciting.
So that sounds.
And I was in grammar school.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad actually drove down to the inauguration because a family friend had tickets for a reviewing stand. And he also invited two of my aunts. What we didn't know at the time was that he was interested in one of my aunts.
Scandal.
And he eventually became an uncle, which was very wonderful.
It's nice to have family in high places. So it sounds like that early experience probably had an effect on you and your interest in the news. Would you say, like,
the news was important, yes, and newspapers were important in the house. My father read the Jersey Journal. I know we had the Jersey Journal and the New York Times delivered every day. I don't recall exactly what other papers came into the house, but I remember my father giving us assignments at the breakfast table and saying, you have to read this article, it's very good.
That's where you got it from.
And I remember my sister Monica, when she took her SATs, she, I don't know if it was Red Smith, one of the great sports reporters for the New York Times, wrote a column, and she got to a word that she didn't know, and she said to my father, do you know what such and such means? And my father said, no, he said, I know what it means, but you need to learn it, look it up. So she looked it up, went off to take her SATs, and that word was on the SATs.
Damn.
So she wrote to the reporter and said, thank you. And he wrote back to her, so that was that was a real thrill. Yeah.
So news was always there. I remember Pop and Grandma also both reading newspapers all the time.
But most houses,
houses did. Yes.
In America did at the time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So what led you? I know that you were a voracious reader as a child.
Yes.
What led you down the path of becoming a news reporter? How did you wind up at the Jersey Journal?
Okay. One of the things I think that was very influential was one time a family friend invited us. His brother was the head of production at the New York Times and invited us to go on a tour. And I had never thought about newspapers as a career, and certainly it was a very male-dominated place, as were most businesses at that time. But we went on a tour, oh my God, and there was the copy desk shaped like a U, and these men with the visors on, for the glare of the light, and then we went down to the press room, and they let me push the button to start the press. Oh, it was like I died and went to heaven, and all I could think of was the people up, on the other floor upstairs had sat down and actually wrote those words, and their words were going out to thousands and thousands of people. And it just thrilled me to think of that. And so I guess I squirreled that away, and that was something that was there. I then applied for, I was off for Easter for a week or something from college, and applied for, and could I come in and work for a week? I could work the summer, and so they tried me out for the week and then took me back for the summer. But at that point, I had already signed a contract to teach for a year, and I thought I need to respect that contract, which I did, and it was the longest year of my life. I was not cut out for that, definitely.
No.
So as luck would have it, they did then have a position that was opening up the following, after I finished teaching the year following September, and I knew the very first time I was there that that's where I belonged. It was thrilling. In a lot of ways, it was like joining a circus, because the characters were right out of the front page or Damon Runyon. I mean, they were just the most bizarre and strange, but smart and interesting and very curious, and they loved words like I did. And I loved it.
The idea of a deadline for an entire newspaper, for and a thick one, right? Like not what we see now when newspapers, even if you come across one, it's essentially a pamphlet, right?
Right.
So, but like the daily grind of it. It must have been, the deadlines, and when it comes to like politics or big breaking news.
Yeah. I would say this, that I was lucky in the beginning that I worked mostly doing features and so forth, which did not, most of the things I did in the very beginning were not on deadlines. So that was a good way to get your feet wet. Actually, because I was female, I was assigned to a job in the women's section, which was the only place that women were, except for the one woman who covered religion on the city desk, Betty Foley, who was there forever and was a real icon of the Jersey City community. She was.
So what are the kinds of things that you had to cover in the women's section?
Cook of the Week. That was an exciting one. Yeah. And one of the things that got under my crawl was that the women's editor, from whom I learned an awful lot and was a very sharp person, she was very set in her ways and thinking the only people we could cover in Jersey City were white people. So I would make it a point of calling the black churches and saying, who's a good cook in your church? And then traipsing off and seeing this woman, talking to this woman about her recipe for collard greens or whatever it was. And while I knew that the editor wasn't crazy about my direction, I also knew if it was well written, she would have to take it. So that worked out just fine for me, and I developed contacts in a lot of places that hadn't been explored before, certainly by the women's section. They covered women's clubs, which were very popular. Rosary Society, picture of every time they elected officers and so forth. And while all of that seems very frivolous now, there was a lot of great community service being done by those organizations. And that, in addition to the news, which was so important, those stories and that coverage really strengthened, I think, the fabric of the community and gave acknowledgement to people who were doing so much good work.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for being a subversive ally. That's nice. Well, I appreciate that about you. What did your you were headquartered in Journal Square,
right,
Jersey City, and did your reporting ever bring you to Hoboken?
Yes, yeah. I came to Hoboken for various things. One of them, when I eventually moved over to the news desk. And also, I should say this, my time at the Jersey Journal, it was a total of 27 years. The first 7, I was in my 20s, and I was working as a reporter, first in the women's section and then on the city desk. Then I left work for about 5 years and had my kids. And then I was the founding editor of the Hoboken Reporter during that time, and left there after about a year, and then was called back to the Jersey Journal, where I spent another 21 years. So my Jersey Journal time was in 2 chunks.
This is in the newsroom?
That's in the newsroom,
That's great.
Journal Square, yep. And that's my friend John Watson behind me.
Yeah.
He teaches communications at American University now.
Oh, great.
But anyway, so one of the stories that I got to cover as a reporter in Hoboken was very exciting. I had my own apartment in Jersey City, and I got a call early in the morning from the editor, which never happened. And he said, "Get down to Hoboken. A train has crashed into the station, came in and smacked into the station, and people have been injured." Okay, fine. So I didn't have a car. I don't remember how I got down there. I think it was by path. I think maybe I walked to the square or took a bus. I don't remember. But by the time I got there, the people had all been carted off to the hospital, and there was nobody there except police and a barrier. So I went over to the hospital figuring I could talk to some injured people in the emergency room, whatever. And when I got there, the hospital was on fire.
Oh my God.
And
St. Mary's?
At St. Mary's.
Oh my God.
And there were nurses carrying infants down the fire escape. It was crazy. And there was a tavern right across the street, the Clinton Tavern. And I was, there were no cell phones. I was in there with a handful of change trying to call the city desk, and Dr. Lewis came in, who was a well-known local pediatrician, and he was using his change to call other hospitals saying, we're sending babies to you.
Oh
we're
my
sending.
God.
Yeah, it was pretty nuts. So that was a very, very exciting day. I think that was just a few months before I got married. I remember that so clearly because my fiance was living in the same apartment building, and I said, I'm leaving for work. And he said, well, what's going on? And I wouldn't tell him because he worked for the Star Ledger, and I didn't want them to get a jump on a good story.
Sorry, no scoop for you,
No
Star
scoop for
Ledger. I love that. I love that. I had never heard that before. Well, okay, so okay, good. So let's rewind.
Okay.
And tell us how you met Dad.
Okay.
And how you wound up in Hoboken.
Okay. So that's my favorite chapter. I was very, very fortunate. I was there. He is.
Oh, Dad.
That's what we looked like when we moved to Hoboken.
So cute.
Yeah. And that's yeah.
That's okay.
But so I was in my 20s. You know, I met a lot of people working for the paper and just in life in general. And I was dating his jazz critic for a while. And I had saved up my vacation time for 2 years, along with a few vacation days. And I was going to go to Europe for, I had 24 days in the can, and I was going to go to Europe. And so George said, oh, well, my friend Arturo, he's going to Europe, and he does this whole $5 a day thing. He's quitting his job, and he hopes to be there for 6 months or something. So I said, well, I really wanted to go to Spain or Italy, but the word was that if you're a single woman traveling alone, those are tough countries to travel in. So he said,
so what year? I'm sorry. What year is this? Like 72?
This is 75.
Oh, 75. Okay.
Yeah, I
okay.
think.
Ish.
So,
okay.
yeah. So I set off and, so George said, oh, well, let's go to the Bridge Club, which was a bar in Newark, near the Star Ledger. And Arturo was there. And he introduced him, and I said, well, I'm thinking about going to Spain. And he said, well, come, just write to me, let me know when you're coming, and I'll show you around. I'll probably be in Barcelona at that time. I said, oh, okay, fine, that's great. I knew nothing about Spain or Barcelona. Anyway, and of course in those days, again, no cell phones, no faxes, no communication really. The way to contact anyone in Europe was to send a letter to the American Express office. So I sent him a letter to the American Express office and told him when I hoped to arrive in Barcelona on this day. I was in Paris at the time. And we met up in Barcelona, and I figured, well, I'll stay a couple of days and then I'll move on. I had a Eurail pass, and 2 days, and then, well, I'll stay another day. So I was there 5 or 6 days, and we had the best time. We had so much in common. We loved newspapers. We loved books and words. We did the crossword puzzle every morning from the International Herald Tribune, we had fun doing that. And he was from he was also one of 8 children. And Catholic, Democrat, I mean, all these things were in order.
Falling into line.
The one thing that was really different was where he was from. And he was from a tiny town in Texas. He was Mexican-American. And the town was right on the Tex-Mex border. So that was also fascinating to me, and still is, that we managed to get together. I mean, it was pretty crazy. So that was great, and we were friends. I was still dating his friend back home. He apparently had some interest in somebody else. It was just kind of weird. So anyway, I came home we were writing letters back and forth during the summer, and then he finally said, I'd really, really like to see you again. So I said, okay, fine. And I decided that I would go to Greece and meet him there. He was going to different places, and I met up with him in Greece. Well, the first trip to Barcelona was June. I met him in Greece in October. Bam, that was it. The October trip to Greece, I was there a week. We decided that this was it. We were getting married.
I love it.
It was. I think we had actually been in each other's presence less than 10 days.
Oh
when that
my
was decided.
God! I hope you're listening at home, because this is hot stuff here. Mom, scandalous. I love it.
Both of us had been around the block a bit. He was 15 years older than I, so that
16.
Yeah, just like Prince Charles and Lady Di.
Yours had a better ending.
Oh, for sure. So anyway, and then we got married the following April. So that was quick. Yeah.
So
and he was one of the few men I had ever dated who actually had a savings account.
Oh.
So he was better with money than I was, for sure. And he we started thinking about, we were in an apartment in Jersey City, the Hague apartment at Duncan and the Boulevard, which was a lovely, lovely building, pre-war building. But he said, we really need to settle down and buy a house. And I was not a fan of moving to the suburbs. He absolutely was not. Yeah. Partly, I think, and we wanted a place that would accommodate both of our work. So I thought about Jersey City, and the brownstoning movement was up and running. In Brooklyn, certainly, it was strong. There was beginning to be talk about, and there are brownstones in Jersey City and Hoboken, too. So one of the things that really influenced me, there was an editor who had been in Hoboken for years, covering the head of the Hoboken Jersey Journal office, named Bill Taft. And he was very serious and conservative and cheap. And he would never send out for coffee. He always brought his lunch, wore the same clothes decade after decade, that kind of person. And I said to him, tell me, what do you think about investing in Hoboken? My husband and I are thinking maybe Hoboken. And he said, things are moving. There's the model city stuff. Yeah. Applied housing is coming along. And the other thing is that it's not big like Jersey City. So one person can make a difference. And he said, and another thing that he said was, occasionally there'll be a block that's a little, he didn't say sketchy, but that's what I would use. Like, you're walking along and you just feel,
Yeah.
But he said, it doesn't continue. You might hit a rough block on Willow or on Clinton, and then the next block is pretty okay. Right. And I found that to be true. That it was really, really safe for city living. I grew up in Jersey City, so right. I had something to.
You were already starting off with like the city's sixth sense,
Oh yeah.
And we talked about that a little bit about how when I was growing up we did a lot of family vacations in cities, and we went back to Barcelona, we went to DC, New Orleans, Portland, Oregon, we love visiting cities, and it's a sense that you have, that you develop, right, as you as a city person.
And I realized when I was young and traveling in Europe by myself what a gift that was. And it was a very precious gift that my parents had given us of growing up in a city.
And public transportation too, right? Like we, anywhere we went, it was always like, okay, let's figure out the bus because we take the subway in New York, so therefore there's no problem for us to tackle whatever the next one is. So you and Tad get married. Mr. Taft tells you to move to Hoboken.
Hoboken's a good investment.
And so you land.
We looked at I think we actually looked at 5 or 6 houses.
Okay.
And then we came to this one. And the thing that
1254.
1254.
The only
Garden
54
Street.
in Hoboken, by the way.
Right.
Every time I called for pizza as a kid, they would be like, "You're lying. There's no 54. I was like, "I swear, it's 54."
But a few of the things that sold me on it. One was that you can't really see it too well here, but there were 3 bay windows on the first floor, which brought in a lot of light.
Spectacular.
And they were surrounded by stained glass. And sadly, they no longer are.
R.I.P. It was so beautiful.
And that was really beautiful. So I loved that. And then the other thing was they had put in a tiny little powder room on the first floor. And I thought, if I'm going to be having kids and toilet training, I do not want to have to run up a flight of stairs every time somebody needs to go winky tink. No, thank you. So I thought
it's so funny because if like the houses are all identical.
Yes.
On that, as they are in a lot of Hoboken.
Rows, yeah.
The full row is identical, and most of them did not have bathrooms.
Did not have that.
When I was little. Yeah.
So that was a selling. That was an odd selling point.
I would say so.
It sold me. So we've paid the fabulous sum of $35,000.
Go, Mom.
And it was the best financial decision we ever made.
By a long shot.
Absolutely. And so began our adventure in Hoboken. And the city has given us so much. It really has.
Tell me about, I have so many great memories of the many wonderful neighbors that we had.
Oh.
A level of eccentricity that does not exist in Hoboken to the same extent anymore. Right. Who were some of the greatest hits on the block?
Well, gotta start with Lucille and Ralph Bufus.
Oh, the best.
Who lived a few doors down. And
I think there's a picture of them from like Christmas, Rand. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were number one.
And
my adopted grandparents.
Yes, Lucille started babysitting for Nora, and then when Peter came along, for Peter as well. When I went back to work, she had them full time or after school, and she and her husband became their Italian grandparents, which was just a wonderful, wonderful thing, a gift beyond measure, and
taught me how to cook.
I taught Nora how to cook.
There they are.
and part of, she became one of my dearest friends. One of the funny thing is when Nora was little, most kids start off by saying Mama, Dada. Nora's first word was Ralph. Because Ralph was deaf. And Grandma Lucille was always saying, Ralph. So Nora decided that would be her first word.
Ralph.
But they added so much to our lives, and I hope we added some fun to theirs. They were terrific.
Next door, we had Palma and Benny.
The parents of Ben Fernandez, the famous photographer who's been featured here at the museum. And they were characters. Ben worked at the shipyard, and Palma was a housekeeper, and they didn't get along too fabulously well. Let's put it that way. So occasionally we'd be sitting at dinner, and a plate or something would hit the wall from the other side, and they made life very interesting. And Palma
she was a little more devoted to her 11 cats.
Than
she was. Yeah.
One of my favorite things about Palma was she would put out bowls of food in her kitchen, on her front steps for these cats, and left her window open so that they could come in. Well, then she thought the cats were having a growth spurt because the cat food was disappearing. What it was a possum that had taken up residence under her china cabinet. And so she called the cops, and the cops came, and they were like,
not my department.
Eventually, they got the possum out, and she grabbed them. She said, now listen to me. You've got to take that possum to a forest. Like, to be kind to it, be good to it. And the officer's like, oh, yes, ma'am.
Yes,
oh, no
absolutely.
problem. And I'm thinking, right in the Hudson River.
Right.
Bye-bye, possum. Oh, my God. She was a piece of work. And then they would get dressed up on Sunday and go off to Roseland to go dancing.
Yes.
And when she got dressed up, she looked like Lauren Bacall. She was a gorgeous woman, and Ben was handsome.
Yeah.
He was so they were very interesting, and there were some other the block was largely working class and middle class. We had a boarding house on the block. Mm-hmm. We had factory workers on the block. We had cops, firemen, teachers, municipal workers. And a few professionals, not many, and it was just a very mixed group of people, and they would do anything for you. They were terrific.
And so, I mean, there the maracas. I loved
Lou and
the Carlos and Alice Perez, the Frios.
Yep.
The Frios were who came over and told you to put curtains in the window?
Oh,
who
that was Josie, John's mother, right?
Oh,
we think, young urban types, and I thought, the best thing to do is not to have curtains in the window. It gives you this whole expanse to look at. You could see the streets, people walking by. This is very urban. I like that. And this old lady from across the street, she comes by one day, rings the bell, and she has a handful of curtains for me. So I thought, okay, I didn't pass that test, and I had to put up curtains.
Message received.
Thank
you, Josie.
But when we moved in 77, and in 78 I had Nora, and out of nowhere, it seemed, came this parade of women from the neighborhood who brought me hand-knitted caps and sweaters for Nora, and they were all so happy that there was a family settling in. And
I love that.
Because their kids had moved on. They, for the most part, had moved Secaucus, Toms River, someplace.
Right.
Out of Hoboken.
Yeah.
Which was considered, for them, a big step up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So me first, 78.
Yep,
And
78.
Then,
there she is. And that's the block. You can see
adorable.
there aren't as many trees.
Look at that.
Yeah.
No trees.
And
actually, that's kind of in front of 1222.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nora was the first, and then son Peter came along. And I'm commercial interruption here. I'm proud of both of my children. Nora is a former preschool teacher at Kaplan Preschool at the synagogue, and is now the head of the Office of Constituent Affairs in Hoboken.
Oh, thanks, Mom.
Solving all kinds of problems, and she's now a rat expert.
Don't email me.
And then and she didn't go far to choose her mate. She was very smart. She just went down the block to 1222 Garden Street.
Perfect.
And so my wonderful son-in-law is Damien DiBenedetto, who teaches at Hoboken High, and they have Otis Arturo DiBenedetto,
I see. I'm seeing a comment here about Di Benedetto's. Eric Kammer. Hello, I went to school in Hoboken with a boy, John Di Benedetto, in 1976. There are apparently, so Di Benedetto is my married name. I don't know John, but apparently there are different branches. And I will investigate this for you and try to get back to you on this because I would love to know.
Yeah.
I would love to know more. And I think you were then going to say my brother Peter.
Right. Peter was, one of the things about Otis is that he is a student at the Branch School, which is where son Peter went. And Peter is now the owner and operator of the Drum Den, which is a music school and drum shop in the Neumann Leathers Building. And he and his wife Verity live in Rutherford, and they have a precious little girl named Phoebe, who was also the joy of my life. So I'm very lucky.
So you raised children in Hoboken.
Right.
And now look how cute we are, Mom. I love that. I love that so much. So, you raised children in Hoboken, and now you are having the chance to be a grandma in Hoboken. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to know what you think about being an urban kid and what that does to children and how it changes them and what that experience is.
Well, part of it I think we've kind of covered in the fact that it gives you a certain instinct about cities and a familiarity with public transportation, that sort of thing, and with dealing with different types of people. Although Hoboken doesn't give you the variety that other cities do. But I love being a senior in Hoboken. There's plenty to do. I love being so close to the city, which is to New York, which is something I've always enjoyed. Yeah. But now I have the time for it, which is great. I love the fact that I can come home from the ballet or a show at 11 o'clock at night, get off the bus and walk to my apartment, and I'm safe.
Yeah.
The quality of life, of living in Hoboken is extraordinary, and I don't think everyone appreciates that. So that's, and I can walk to pretty much everything I need, although I still have my car. And I use that, I do drive neighbors to doctors and ShopRite and so forth. So anyway, that's...
Shout out to Marie. We love you. Another one of our favorite neighbors. Love those McLaughlin girls. But speaking of the arts, you were the founding editor of the Hoboken Reporter. You were also one of the other things that you did was you were the editor of the Gold Coast.
Right.
And so the Gold Coast was, in as far as I can recall, and this was I think probably the position of yours that was most formative in my life. Because your office was on 2nd in Washington,
right.
While I was in grammar school and middle school. So you were kind of like your proximity was very close, and we could meet for Chinese food for lunch. I would leave St. Peter and Paul and meet you down at Monte Oro's for
Monte Oro,
right?
Yeah.
for a quick lunch of beef and broccoli when I was in like 2nd, 3rd grade.
Right. I ate the broccoli, you ate the beef.
Yeah, it was a good split. And then I would go back for some afternoon torture. But but you were at Gold Coast at the time. And Gold Coast was a weekly tabloid-sized newspaper magazine sort of thing, which was devoted to the arts in Hoboken. And when you think now about the state of print journalism, and someone had asked, what is your opinion on print journalism in Hudson County and in Hoboken specifically. But when you think about it now, it's incredible that there was a print weekly devoted to the arts.
Yeah, and to the newer residents. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
And so what was your experience like at Gold Coast, and what were some of the things that stood out to you from that time?
Well, I guess one of the things was that we knew that newer residents and the arts community was not particularly interested in at that time, the political machinations that we covered so well, or some of the other, school conflicts in Jersey City, things like that.
They weren't reading the Jersey Journal.
They were not reading the Jersey Journal. They were not going to. So we needed to come up with a new product. And it was a lot of fun. It's always fun launching something new. The launch of the Hoboken Reporter was an absolute thrill. That was really a lot of fun. So the Gold Coast, we combined a lot of coverage, good coverage of the arts, featuring local artists and musicians and so forth. Lots of listings of who was going to be playing where, what night, that kind of thing. And some good features, like we had Matt Groening cartoons and also
Life in Hell, right?
Life in Hell. Life in Hell. Yeah. Yes, it was fabulous. Yeah. And also we had a local cartoonist, whose first name escapes.
Jim Ryan.
Jim Ryan. There it is.
Oh, yes.
And he came up with a new cartoon every week, which was
so
just staggering to think about now. We had a very funny question and answer column from the Chicago Reader. So there was, and then classifieds with apartments for rent and things like that. So it was a good package, and it was free. It was distributed mostly in newspaper boxes on the street.
Yeah.
And mostly in Hoboken. So that was a good time. We had a good crew working, some very talented. I worked with so many talented journalists during all of my years. Many of them went on to, we had them when they were very young.
Yeah.
And many of them went on to very wonderful careers, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Pulitzer Prize winners, and it's still thrilling to know them. But one of the people who worked on our staff was the graphic artist Jerry Fallow, whose name you may remember.
Hoboken royalty.
Yes, exactly.
There she is.
There she is. Hi, Jerry. And that seems like it was all 10 minutes ago, but I know it wasn't. And that's how Jerry and I got to know each other, which is
Fun fact, Jerry Fallow has looked the same since 1985.
I know that.
I remember going to a party at Steve Fabian's bar, which is across the street from City Hall, is now McSwiggin's, I think, right? Yeah. Right on that corner.
Right on that corner.
And there was like a back room that was good for parties.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think that may be our final seg into bar culture, which we've talked a little bit about. And some of the fun restaurants and bars that you and Dad appreciated over the years. Oh, we love
Steve Fabian's. That was a great spot.
Right. And there was that Cuban place across the street too, Lily's.
Lily's for lunch.
Lily's, that was good.
That was good. Cheap lunches.
So good.
The
fried onions.
Beans
I know.
Good stuff. Right behind City Hall.
That was a great place. Was the place that was in the back of the brass rail?
Oh, that was Edie's. Yeah.
Edie's.
And remind me, Nora, to segue back to a couple of the.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. The Jersey, back to the
Yes.
newspaper stuff, important stories.
I will.
Okay. But yeah. Oh, there. My husband loved bars. He was not a drinker. He could sit there all afternoon with a 30-cent glass
Yes.
of beer. But he loved people. He loved people's stories. And he loved to sit at a bar and talk to people. And so, I tagged along with him, being Irish.
Or I did.
It was, that we were very compatible when it came to that. And, but Edie's was at the very back end of the brass rail. There was this tiny little bar with maybe 6 or 8 stools, and Edie held the liquor license, and Marie, her friend, was the sidekick. Like they needed 2 people to run this big operation kind of thing. And you'd go in and sit there, there'd be nobody there, and all of a sudden, Edie and Marie, who lived in an apartment upstairs, would come down the back staircase and make an entrance. In these 1950s dresses with spangles and kind of crinoline.
This is like my retirement dream. That's what I want to be.
But they were a hoot. They were they were funny. They knew everybody. And so we had some fun times with Edie and Marie, and kept up with them after they sold the place, which, that was hard for them to do.
I also loved Three Brothers on it was on the corner of 14th and Park, 14th and Park, yeah.
14th and Park, and they always had the Christmas tree out front
with
beer cans hanging on it. Yeah.
And a sign that said BBQ chicken.
Barbecue chicken. Yes.
And 14th Street at the time was like very Puerto Rican. And Dad and I used to go out like for walks after dinner. And I just remember it was like everyone sitting on the sidewalk, like old men playing dominoes,
boom boxes.
Yeah. And I remember like, music everywhere, and I would like dance on the street, and it was just such a
lively,
yes, and
urban,
yes, and just everything about it was so real.
Yeah.
And none of it was fabricated. It was just like a real experience.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry that I digressed from some of your other. I know we have. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, audience. We do this in real life too. Let me just take a break with my fabulous Hoboken Talks
mugs,
swag available in the gift shop at the Hoboken Historical Museum, by the way. What was it that you were going to say, Mom, about some other...
you had asked me about this
Jersey
before,
Journal. Tell me.
About some of the stories that I worked on. Well, I mentioned the train wreck and the hospital fire. That was pretty exciting. As far as Hoboken was concerned... the election of Tom Fazzetti was huge, and it was a real game changer for Hoboken. Also, his death, which was very sudden while he was in office, and those were really significant times for the newspaper.
It was probably one of my earliest, like, most intense memories. I remember going to his wake at City Hall.
City Hall, yeah.
I was probably like 8 or 9, something like that. And I remember his sister said to me, I was crying. I was so sad because we knew him.
He was always around the neighborhood.
He came to a party at our house.
One time he walked in. Yeah.
And his sister took my hand and said, "I can see that you were very good friends."
Oh, what a beautiful
so nice.
Thing. Yeah.
So nice.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And she was friggin' dealing with like a full morning city, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And then I remember standing right here on 13th Street in front of the Y.
In front of the Y.
When his funeral cortege came by and we were all doing there it is, a V for Vizzetti, right?
Yeah. I remember during his election campaign, all of the people that he was running with made sure that he cleaned up and wore a suit every day during the campaign so that he looked a little more normal, okay?
Yeah.
And he did that. And then the morning after the election, he came into our news office downtown, and he walks in and he's wearing a peach ensemble, peach pants, and a peach Western shirt with fringe on the pockets. And he had a quart of orange juice and something else. And he's drinking, he said, do you want some? Do you want some? You know, just like, oh yeah, let me take a slurp, Tom. Sure, I'd love to.
Hard pass.
But it was like, oh, he's back.
You can't suppress that for that long.
But he was certainly probably the most memorable character we bumped into. And of course, the other huge story for everyone everywhere around here was 9/11. And I was working in the newsroom at Journal Square at that time. I think there was no longer a news office in Hoboken at that time. But it was so affecting. And I mean, most news people have a wall that they can throw up when you're covering a nasty murder or something like that. You can just kind of go through and do it, as do medical professionals, people in other police, people in other areas. But this one really took people apart, and it was very hard. And it went on forever. Yeah. And it felt as though we personally were almost repositories of other people's grief. And I can tell you, probably for at least 3 or 4 months, I answered the phone every day, and a person on the other line was saying, I still believe my daughter's alive. Oh, and I think she was probably pushed onto one of those ferries and is on your side of the river. How can I get to St. Mary Hospital? How can I get to the Jersey City? So you'd give them the bus directions from the path and the whole thing. And so often they say, you don't think I'm crazy, do you? And I thought, oh my God.
No.
You know.
Wouldn't I do the exact same thing?
Absolutely. You know? Absolutely. And I remember the 1 year anniversary, of course, we ran pictures of all the people that we knew locally who had died, and there was one person we could never get a picture of, and a woman called and said, I have a picture of him, I'd like to contribute it. And I said, well, who are you? And she said, okay, here's the deal, I was his mistress. And the family wouldn't let me attend anything. Oh. And this is the only thing I can do for him.
Oh my God!
And these things, I mean, even every 9/11, I did not lose anyone personally in this. I was so fortunate, but it was like a constant hit in the head every time. You know, just. That was a tough one, and I hope I was able to help some people get through it in some small way. And the other thing I found very interesting was that when you get in touch with a victim's family, some of them wanted nothing. Don't mention it, leave us alone, fine, we respect that, no problem. Others wanted trees planted. This
Right.
happened, memorial scholarship, whatever. And both of them were right.
Yeah.
You just...
But like all you can do is help someone else tell their story, right?
Yes, yes.
And that's the beautiful thing about the work that you've done, is whether it's, finding the best cook in Bergen Lafayette or, elevating this poor woman's boyfriend, telling those stories and you and dad's love for stories also, because sitting at a bar, is there anything more to that than just like listening to people's stories and sitting here tonight and telling the story? And, it's just so much of the most that we can do, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
What do you miss the most about Hoboken, and what is your favorite thing about Hoboken now?
I miss the economic diversity.
Yeah. Amen.
I miss being able to sit on my front stoop and talk to people who have different challenges than I do.
Yeah.
And who see the world somewhat differently. I also, no offense, but two things that I have very little interest in. One is finance, and one is technology, which means I really am a dinosaur. Okay, fine. But I really can't talk to a lot of my neighbors because of that, because that's what they do. So that's part of it. So anyway, I do miss the economic diversity, and I also miss what else? A variety store,
Right.
Yes. Can I buy a pair of socks that aren't $25 or that kind of thing?
Right. We actually, Otis and I were walking down Washington Street today, and we walked by Panera, and I was like, this used to be McCrory's.
Yes.
And you could buy anything.
And
anything.
They had a horse out front that you could ride on. Yeah.
And I'll shout out Moxie here, who is noting, don't forget our love of the hop.
My love of the hop.
There's nothing better, Hoboken.
No. Okay, so things I like now.
Yeah.
Transportation is much better. There's bus service over to the west.
Yep.
There's the hop.
Love it.
My favorite word is FREE.
Free.
The buses run more frequently.
Light rail.
Yep. The ferry.
Uptown ferry.
Oh, Uptown
nice.
ferry.
I know.
Of it.
We got it all.
It's again. These are things people don't fully appreciate. Go to any community around us, they have nothing like it.
It's not like that.
No.
I
love the waterfront, which did not exist. I mean, it existed, of course. The waterfront was there, but you couldn't get to it. Yeah, there was no access at all, and one of the pictures I had was at the kids at Stevens, up at the lookout point, because whenever visitors came, we would take them up there. So there it is, so that they could look across to New York, but there was no other way to see it.
Look at those old piers. That's great.
Yeah.
I remember
you could ride along what was River Road,
but people didn't walk there.
No, you didn't walk there.
And
it was
dirt.
And
it was gross.
Potholes.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, it was like you would walk to the end of 13th Street. There was a fence.
Yep.
I remember we could go like, You could go like under, like behind a fence
Chain
the
link.
old chain link, by the old, when like by the Delaquila building, as we called it, right? Which is the T building.
Right.
You could go back there. And then, I remember going back there with Dad too, but, you know, oh, hi, Jane. Hi, Angela.
Hi, Jane. Hi, Angela.
Other good neighbors.
Yes.
But yeah, the waterfront is pretty magnificent.
It is.
We're very lucky to have it.
Absolutely.
And we're so lucky that so many people, you know, so many people in like your generation of people who moved to Hoboken really fought for that. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Like the Cormans.
Yes.
There's a nice picture of them
the
in fancy
environmental
outfits, I think.
Yeah.
Donna Cahill.
And Donna Cahill,
The Hoboken Environment Committee.
Yep. And the Fund for the Better Waterfront.
Oh, there we go. Look at those.
Okay, so
look at those snazzy
those are
neighbors.
some old neighbors, including the Cormans and the Finnertys and Gina and Ellsworth Salisbury. They were the hosts. We were always bumming around in our jeans and so forth. And I guess it was Gina who came up with the idea of let's all get cleaned up, and have a dinner party. And so that's what we did, and we trying to impress each other.
Looking good.
Yeah, looking good is
Looking
right. That
good.
was fun. Yeah.
Tony says Cynthia Silver.
So,
Yes,
oh
I was
yes,
just
thank
thinking
you,
about
Tony.
her.
Yeah, Cynthia.
A lot.
Yeah,
There's the and that was a huge influence on me. As like an activist. Right. And, you know, because of your position, yours and Dad's positions at newspapers, you didn't really.
We couldn't get into the
really
nitty-gritty.
get into Hoboken politics.
No.
Right. But I always say I'm the only person I know who went to the New York City Labor Day parade as a kid. Right? It was about activism, and it was about lifting up the workers, and the waterfront activism was a huge part of my childhood. And the River City Fair.
Yes.
And being on the pier, and like it was incredible.
And thinking this could be ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we're so close. There's one tiny piece
of left. Yeah.
And it's gonna be magnificent when it's complete.
It is magnificent.
It's magnificent
already.
now,
It's
but
just
you know,
beyond our wildest dreams.
Yeah.
Really. It never dawned on me that would happen.
right? We didn't even know to fight for it.
Yeah.
Right?
Early on, anyway. Yeah. Oh, very true. There's Arturo.
Our old kitchen.
And the old kitchen, and Peter helping him out with the story, I guess. But Arturo had a very exciting career in the newspaper business as well. And he loved the Star-Ledger. He was there for, I think, 30 years.
Yeah.
He was the arts and entertainment editor. And as part of that gig, he was also a Tony voter. Which meant that we had second night tickets to everything that opened on
Every Broadway show.
And-
every single one. And if Mom passed, I got to go. It was amazing.
And sometimes Peter, depending on
Peter,
on what it was and so forth. But I had always loved the theater, and even in high school would take first my birthday money or something, take the path in and from Jersey City and go up and see a show. So it was.
But Dad loved the arts too.
Oh,
he loved theater.
He loved visual arts.
But he loved it. He loved it. And I mean, we went. I remember going to the Mexico exhibit at the Met, and we loved it. We just, and it was such a part of him. And you think about him coming from such a, small town, and dreaming for this
to be
life.
in a city, yeah. All he
then
wanted was to be in a city, and then to be so close to New York City was. He had. When I think about it, he had a wonderful. I miss him so much, but he had a wonderful life. There he is, dressed as Santa Claus. Now That was when he retired. He turned, because he didn't have his work, he turned into Mr. Grumpy Pants. And I thought, this will not last. This is not good. It really drove me crazy. And so I went to United Decorating down on Washington Street.
What was it called? Kirschgessers.
Kirschgessers, right. Yeah. And I bought him a Santa suit. And I said, you better put this on. Well, the minute he did, he loved it. Loved it. Yeah. And Maurice Fitzgibbons would get him gigs. Maurice did PR for a whole bunch of different things. He had him in banks up on Bergen Line Avenue because, of course, he could speak Spanish to all the little kids. Oh, he loved that. The best, though, Maurice had him down in Elizabeth, and they had him on the back of a fire truck. And I don't know, they had to lift him up onto it. And he was, like he was in his late 70s. He was half blind. And, but he
couldn't see a thing once he put all the, the whole thing on.
And then every Christmas Eve for years, he went to Frankie and Johnny's, now Dino and Harry's. And he went in and greeted all the families that were having dinner there. And that was it was right down the block. And he loved that.
It was so fun.
He loved that.
I was his elf. It was very fun.
Yeah, you were his elf.
I had a good time.
Candy canes.
It was really fun. Yeah.
And one time, Maurice had a party. And at place where Peter has his...
Willie McBride's.
Willie McBride's.
Yeah. The old Holiday Inn.
And Maurice had a party there, and Artie said, "Oh, let me wear my Santa outfit." Oh, fine, sure, Christmas party, why not? So he put us on the Christmas outfit, the Santa outfit. We go in, and Maurice is kind of stern and says to Artie, "Now get up there and start leading the singing." And
You're late.
Right?
Did he say you're late?
He said you're late. Get up there. Get up on the stage. So Artie gets up on the stage. We had no idea. Well, and then 10 minutes later, the guy that he had hired walks in, another Santa. So Maurice was like, "Who's this? Who's this? Oh my God,
it's Artie."
That was a lot of fun. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'll wrap it up.
I mean, we could keep going.
No, I think we covered all the the bases. And I think Nora's talking about her early days, but Peter had great fun too.
We just had a lot of fun on the block.
The block.
There was always a gang of kids running up and down and and all
there he is, the drummer. Yeah, Peter in the red. He was.
That's great.
He was. He loved his drums and still does, which is a great thing. But I think Hoboken has just given us so much. I feel so privileged to be here. I really do.
You and me both.
Yeah. See that?
Thank you, Hoboken Museum.
Thank you
for
Hoboken
doing this.
Museum.
What a
this
gift!
Is wonderful.
What a gift!
Thank you so much.
All right, I am going to change my setting. Start talking. So the microphone on my computer is working. Thanks so much, Nora and Pat. That was just great. This is Rand Hoppy. I'm gonna take us out to the end. What a wonderful show. We've got Carolyn Levitt and Charlie Lopez coming up, so stay tuned to our feed and sign up for our email newsletter so you can see what's happening with more Hoboken Talks. We'd like to thank the New Jersey Historical Commission for supporting us. They provide us with grants from I imagine our tax dollars come right here to the museum, and we love them for doing that. This is our Shipyard Circle. They are our top donors, and many of them are our board members, and we thank them very much for all their support. Also, Iron State, they provide us with our space here. We thank them every day. We would not be here without them. So we thanks to Iron State. we've got, I think, 3 or 4 more days left on Philip Jean's photography exhibit up here in the upper gallery where we're recording. These wonderful photos taken from his Hoboken balcony. Every morning he takes at least one picture, and we've got 18 of them up, framed and up on the wall here. They're just beautiful, wonderful things. And downstairs in the main gallery, we have the Hoboken Meadows exhibit. Look at these amazing photos and some great history and research about what used to be 60% of Hoboken wetlands, meadowlands. So now you know why we have our resiliency parks, because that's the kind of place we are. Thanks so much for everybody for watching. We look forward to your comments. Even after we're live, we pay most of our attention to our YouTube channel. So we look forward to your subscribing and taking on our notifications so that you can see what we're up to on YouTube. Thanks so much. And that's it from the Hoboken Historical Museum. Thanks again, Pat and Nora. Bye-bye.